Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix. Let me just check my audio. What do I have here? What do I have? What do I have? What do I have? External microphone built in. I think that's it. I think that's what we have. And what do we have for the old camera? Oh yes, I think we're good there. And we are live. Welcome to another edition of Sunday Night Astrolive. I thank you for your patience on this Sunday evening. I know some of you back east getting a little bit late there. We're not going to go too long tonight, but I always say that, don't I? I think we're going to try to clock in at about 2 hours this evening so that everybody can get a reasonable start on their Monday. So, first of all, hello, and how are you? I hope you've had a pleasant weekend, whatever that looks like for you. And if not pleasant, I hope it was meaningful. And guess what? It's still not over. So, whatever kind of pleasantness you're looking for, or perhaps meaning, you might find it here tonight over the course of the next couple of hours. And the headline, the thumbnail, the lead, as they say, for tonight's show is really kind of a very broad encapsulation of Neptune and Aries, which we now find ourselves swimming through molten seas of tidal influence. Some very interesting things popping up over the last 48, 72 hours as it relates to Neptune and Aries. And we're going to cover that. And there's some other new material that's sort of come across my screen, as it were, that's very Neptune and Aries related, both uh, locally. Here we had just a massive explosion in North Austin not very long ago, within the last couple of hours. Um, and it's destroyed at least 8 to 9 homes. And I think I have a bit of a news clip on it. And so whenever I see something like that, especially when it's related to a home, not a fire, but an explosion, I start to think of things like natural gas, right? And natural gas and methane are going to be big themes with Neptune and Aries, particularly the latter, methane. We'll talk a little bit about methane tonight, and how there have been, for a long time, a series of methane vents and methane escaping through the surface of the earth as the permafrost starts to thaw slightly. There's more methane that rises to the surface. And guess what we have when we have more methane in the air? We have spontaneous combustion. So we have some very interesting things happening with Neptune and Aries. We've got Venus getting ready to go direct this week. We'll touch on that. And this has been this Venus Saturn conjunction. I don't know how you people have been experiencing it, but I've been feeling, how do I say this? Well, this is just my world, right? Because what I do is a little bit different than what other people do, although some of you do something similar in your own way, shape, or form. But I have been feeling just the last few days, in terms of my client relationships and some of the reading work, really grounded, really rooted, really connecting at a really deep level with people, and having this unique experience of tapping into my own inner authority, but without the expense of the other person's inner authority. And that's been a really interesting um, dance with the private sessions. And I'm always learning. Right, this is the beautiful thing about being a practicing astrologer. I'm always learning about my capacity. I'm always learning about other people. Where they're willing to go, where their barriers are, what they're willing to talk about. And I have to say, I went through. It was very interesting. I went through like a major tranche of people that were doing coaching, which I offer on my website, and every single one of them has been nothing short of impressive. Just really, really impressive. And we're not talking like one, particular group like Gen X or Boomers. There's kind of a wide cross section here, and these people have been so committed to doing the work and making you know real substantial changes in their lives. It's been inspiring to see, right? Because when you do something like this, it's great, like to have an impact on somebody's life, but it's even greater when you see humanity, right? You see people taking action and doing things and growing, because it gives me a great sense, or much better sense. It gives me a great feeling that that there's more chapters for humanity here, because people are willing to do the work. They're willing to look at themselves. They're willing to reach a little bit further than they've ever reached before. And I can't tell you how worthwhile that is to see that, because a lot of times what we see in the world doesn't really reflect that. What we see in the world are oftentimes much sadder stories. That's not to say that some of the stories attached to people who come into the coaching portal aren't sad. Of course, there's can be tremendous sadness, but there's a difference, because these people have said, I want to do this. I want to get better. I want to improve this. I want to take a look at this, and it's one of the most rewarding things that I do, to be honest with you. So, and this is not an advertisement to do coaching, but I will say this: this last round of folks who came through, they're kind of winding down in terms of their sessions and their time. So I do have more space if you're committed to doing some coaching, and I'm always available to answer your questions. If you have any questions about that, you're more than welcome to hit me up in locals. You can always send me an email, and let me just put my email in here for people that are interested and want some more information. Uh, so this is a. If you ever want to get a hold of me, ask me questions. That is the best email to get directly to me, right there. So I just wanted to put that in there, and there may be something else you want to reach out to me about. Um, okay, the other thing before we dive into Astro World is uh, I am going to be doing a tour, as it were, and it's going to be an 11th house roadshow. And let me give you some of the dates around it. A number of you folks have asked about it, and I'm happy to meet up with as many people as possible. So right now, the tentative dates that I'm looking at are going to be. I'm thinking maybe the 27th of May, which is a Tuesday. I may leave on Monday the 26th. That's Memorial. Let's see. I think maybe the 27th. I'll probably leave on the 27th, and then I will be back in uh, in Texas 2 weeks later. So from the 27th through the 10th, and let me give you folks kind of an idea as to where I will be on this journey. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so I'll give you a clue here. Let me go back. Hold on. There we go. Let's do this. No, right here. All right. Okay. So I'm going to try to punch up a map of the U.S. Do this one. It's pretty good size. All right. Good. All right. Here we go. So this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so I will start off here, right in this area, and I will go north. I'm going to stop up here in Dallas, this area. We got some people that live up here in this area. We got our friend Liddy Lou, she's up here, and Donna's up here, and Benito's up here. So there's some folks up here, so I'm going to make a little stop up here. And then we're going to go north to Oklahoma City, where I am hoping to meet Janice, the Goat Queen, in Oklahoma City, and visit my friend, good friend Lawrence, who's a very interesting character. And anybody else that wants to connect or meet up here in the Oklahoma City area, I will be there. And then I will drop down and basically find my way. You can't see the map. Oh, you know what? This is fucking StreamYard. Sorry, I wasn't going to swear tonight, but it's fucking StreamYard. Here we go. All right, so here, right here, and then we go up to here, this area right there, and then we go to Oklahoma City, and then I'm going to probably go this way, right here, through Little Rock, and then there's going to be a stop in Memphis. I'm going to go to Graceland. And then Nashville. There's a number of folks that live in Nashville. So I feel like Nashville is going to be on the map, and we're going to do something in Nashville more than likely, even if it's like meet at a restaurant or anything along those lines. Hopefully a bit more. And then keep going here. And then eventually what we're going to do is we're going to find our way all the way out here to Raleigh, Winston-Salem, this area, sort of the triangle, right? So we'll be in the triangle area, maybe some Charlotte right there. So yeah, right in through here, right? And then it's down the coastline and Columbia right there. And then, of course, we're going to wind up down in Savannah right here. And we're going to go just all the way down right here. Boom, 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 boom. Somewhere along the way, we will connect with my good friend Longo. We'll do a Longo stop here and then all the way down here. Then we're going to come back up this way. That's right. And I'm going to spend some time doing a little sort of blue highway along the Redneck Riviera right down here. And then come out right here in Mobile. And then probably try to hook up with my buddy Charlie in Biloxi. And then we've got a little stop over here in New Orleans. New Orleans is probably going to be sort of the last road stop on the journey, and then it's going to be maybe I'll do a little something in Houston. We have some peeps in Houston, and then we'll just keep going on the 10. So there you go. That's the route. So if you are anywhere along these lines right here and here and here and here and here and here and then down here and then the loop around, reach out to me. I'll put this up on locals, and I don't have exact days as to where I will be in certain places. But if there is a place that I have to be, like if somebody wants to book a kind of a group meetup and there's a space involved that you have to reserve and rent or whatever, and I have to be there by a certain day, then we'll do that. As things get closer, I will probably have more of these days kind of lined up so that you'll know kind of where I will be roughly at a given point in time. And I will be available to do personal readings while on this journey as well. So if you wanted to do that, that's possible. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible. And I'm doing it during the month of Gemini. I want to move. I want to get out and move. I want to see the USA in my Chevrolet. I do have a Chevrolet, don't I? That thing takes so much gas, I might have to launch a GoFundMe. All right, let's see who's here tonight. We got my guy, DJ MC in the house. What's going on, brother Mike? Aaron, Susan Waite from Whitefish. The Waites are in the house. Hello, Chad. Meow meow. Claire. Oh my God, there's a big smile when I saw Afro. Hello, Claire. Hello, hello, Claire. Debisu, late night in Amsterdam. That sounds like fun, if you ask me. T. Jordan in the house. Go to Spank. Barber Boots at last. I'm never sure. Sunday night is always usually around 7 p.m. Unless I'm feeling a little bit behind or lazy. And tonight it was the latter. I was definitely on the. It was Jupiter in Sagittarius, first house, Robert, tonight. Let's see. Charlie, what's happening? What a great Masters tournament. It does one good to watch so much class. Christy Daniels in the house. There she is. Christy checking in. What's up, Christy? Meow meow. Love the thumbnail. I have nothing to do with it other than speaking it into existence, literally. WC Ray, the Masters is the finest American sports. You know what? I'm not a huge golf guy, but I do have fond memories watching golf with my grandfather as a young man in his man room, and he would invariably fall asleep. And I thought to myself, if I ever need to take a nap, this is the sport I am going to watch because I am seeing the power of golf in action right now. It doesn't mean I don't know anything about golf or golfers. Trust me, I know plenty about golf and golfers, even though I've only gone golfing a handful of times in my life. That said, I wouldn't mind attending the Masters one of these days. I hear it's a very special place and very special event. And apparently, the food is quite affordable as well. So you put it all together, it feels like a kind of a must-see thing do. Maybe right up there with the Kentucky Derby. Road Trip 1981. What's happening, darling? Good to see PB's in the house. Yes, you can buy me a coffee right there. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate that. The lovely and talented one. There she is. Oh man, the new cat. He is such a. It's amazing how little kittens get under your skin. All of a sudden, you start loving them. Maybe it's the toxoplasmosis. I don't know. Mark, yes, what's going on, brother Mark? Good to see you. Even better speaking with you yesterday. Speaking of speaking, there's Benito Diaz. What's going on, Benito? I hope you made a small fortune today. Down the Wombat hole. Down the Wombat. Thank you for the coffee you bought me last week. Appreciate that. Cato, you did make it on time. Good for you. Green Crow. Green-eyed Crow, what's happening? Misbehaving too. Yes, please hit like, subscribe. Let's get this thing up to at least 16,000 people before the end of the year. Oh, that would be such a dream. Ms. Lulu, hello, hello, hello. Jamie, my man Jamie, checking in from Panama. Lisa Ann White, what's going on, Lisa? Good to see you. I just saw you, Lisa. It was even better to see you last week. Soul Travelers here, Amy Gill. The Muse Memorandum. JJ, should I show you the ring? Should I show them the ring? I got to show JJ. I got to show this ring that JJ made, and it's actually something that that I commissioned. She busted out this stone, and I said, "Man, I really love this stone. It's such a cool stone. It's like I want to have a ring of this stone." And guess what? JJ never fails to deliver. Let me show you this. This is cool. This is, let me do this. Let me just see if I can get it on her feed. It'll be better. If I get it on her feed, then you'll be able to see all the other stuff that she is. Here we go, right here. Uh, oh, Paul D. Hinton. He submits to me that I must add the planetoid Centaur, Nessus, and possibly Tantalus and Ixion as well. But I'm here to introduce the miraculous chart for August 9th, 2025 over Mount Everest. All right, Paul, go climb that mountain. Let me see what I got to show you JJ's right. This is cool. This is cool. Let me find her. I gotta find her. Hold on a second. Here it is. Here it is. Hold on. All right, this is it right here. Right here. I decided to make a statement on my middle finger. And JJ is helping me with that right there. Look at that beauty. That's our gal, JJ Rain de Blanc. Look at that. That's going to be right here. It's going to be right there. And she does a lot of great work. And sometimes if you reach out to her and say, hey, I like that. Can you do something like that for me? The answer is yes, she can. So check her out. I'll put her Twitter link right in here. And JJ has done a lot of tremendous work. The lovely and talented one has been a recipient of a number of bejeweled works of fine art and craft. All right, there you go. All right, who else do we have here? 6 injured, 24 properties damaged in Texas house explosion. Yeah, I actually have a link from a story to that. We'll check that out. My Aries and I are scuba in the morning. Good for you, Steve. That's awesome. Bring the spear gun. That feels very Aries-like, doesn't it? Aries projectiles, blades. Here we go. Neil Smith. What's happening, brother Neil? Here we go. Talked about this last week. If you missed the Thursday show over on Rumble, I highly suggest you track it down. Frisco is fixing to be invaded by SJWs from all over the country. This is the new George Floyd, although they have reversed everything now. Right, they've reversed everything because Carmelo Anthony, a 17-year-old student at a high school in Frisco, Texas, wound up stabbing Austin Metcalf in the heart a couple of weeks ago. And the dark forces of social media and the dark forces of social justice are now painting the picture that Carmelo Anthony was the victim and that he was actually bullied by Austin Metcalf, buoyed by photos of Metcalf with rifles and camo. And people don't understand that this is what people do in Texas. They wear camouflage. They use rifles. They go hunting. I know it seems like an absolutely barbaric act that only the most uncivilized people partake in, but it is done here, and it is done in great numbers, and usually from a very early age. And we're kind of in Civil War territory again, right? I mean, we can unpack this thing right now if we want to. Why do we do this? We are in Civil War territory, and Neptune and Aries again. The last time the last time Neptune and Aries showed up, literally the day that it went into Aries, the day that Neptune went into Aries, the North surrendered at Fort Sumter, and that was really the beginning of the Civil War. And if you look at where Frisco, Texas is, it's really close to where this so-called Mason-Dixon line. So the kind of the northern part of Texas, almost bordering on Oklahoma. And it has all the ingredients of cooking up a black, white, hot civil war because Austin Metcalf, the guy who's dead, is now the perpetrator. This is the inverted world we're living in now. Completely inverted. Totally inverted. And the problem is that there are people that are fanning the flames. And Jason Whitlock, who we're going to talk about tonight, by the way, has called them racial idolaters. And it's funny, right? It's like for a long time, we've been watching how do I say this? The privileged treatment of a particular class or group of people. And if you did not agree with that so called privileged treatment, you were a racist. And what I mean by privilege is that a particular group, let's say somebody who's peacefully protesting, decides that they're going to burn something down, tear something down, loot the building that the thing that they were going to burn down was the contents were in, and perhaps somewhere along the way, somebody winds up getting hurt or killed. Well, that person would not be facing uh, strict and serious consequences for their actions. In most cases, they would be dealing with a cash bail or whatever the minimum requirements for bail were, and they'd be out on the streets, and their case would be delayed, and eventually it would happen, and the next thing you know, there would be no justice being served. And so we've been seeing this for a very long period of time, right? This is what's been happening for a long period of time, and there are a group of people who are frankly sick of it. And this is all by design. Right? It's all being done to ultimately turn us against one another and to stoke the fires of hatred, animus, the culture of grievance. And this is very Neptune and Aries, by the way. So let's talk about this. When we invoke Neptune, when we invoke Pisces, what are we invoking? We are invoking the scapegoat. We are invoking the victim. The height of victimization and victimhood, Neptune and Pisces. I mean, come on. Victimhood became victimhood became an occupation. It became a career. And people were making, people from what, 2012 on, if you were in the victim business, you're making a shit ton of money. And it doesn't matter whether you were a victim or you were somebody representing a victim. If you were a lawyer representing a so-called victim, you're making a shit ton of money. And we saw the victim class get elevated and celebrated starting around 2012. And people who will watch this will say, well, of course, that's your perspective, you fucking colonizer. But we saw it. We saw it right before our very eyes. There was a group of people who were elevated, and it was because they were victims. The whole modus operandi around this is it's basically genocidal altruism. Somewhere along the way, there's a large number of people who kind of look like me, who had some kind of a kill switch inside of themselves, and said, "Yeah, we don't matter. You know, just take it all. We don't matter. We don't care. It doesn't. It's all good. Here, let me take a knee. Let me take two knees. In fact, let me get on two knees and my palms." Like at a certain point, watching all of this shit go down during the whole George Floyd thing made me sick to my fucking stomach. And I think there are a number of you out there who would agree with me. But again, what I'm trying to get across here is that victimization became a, a profession, something that people aspired towards. And you, whoever it was, whether it was that what's that guy's name who pretended he was like he was kind of born white. What's the Malcolm Malcolm Flex or anyway, they're all Tehoni Co, like all these people, Robin DiAngelo, Don Lemon, like you know who they are. These people made a shit ton of money by promoting victimization, a shit ton. Networks made a shit ton of money by promoting victims and their tragic lives and the consequences of their actions, which were turned into basically victimization, even though in many cases they were the perpetrator and now they're the victim. Neptune and Pisces was great for that. It was I never saw anything like that before in my life. And of course, and I don't bag on Christians. In fact, I try not to bag on anybody's real religion per se, right? But let's face it, the Christians got played. They got totally played during this time. Christians, Catholics, Catholic charities turned the other cheek. Got totally played. And guess what? A lot of them are done being played now. And this is kind of where we're headed with this thing. And again, it's Neptune and Aries, right? And Aries, when you deal with Aries, you're dealing with violence. Aries is the god of war. Aries is Mars. It's basically kill them all and let God sort out the rest. I mean, let's be clear about this. If we're having a non-politically correct discussion about Aries, we're summoning Mongols and Huns, and we're summoning Vikings, and we're summoning the Romans and the Spartans. This is all very Aries, right? There's a functional modern version of it that we could reframe it and put it into psychological terms and something that will help you in your chart. Of course, there's a kind of a user-friendly version for everything I'm talking about. But when we get down into the mythological roots of a sign like Aries, this is what we're talking about. It's these forces: unbridled violence, anger, yeah, rape, pillage, and plunder, conquest, territory, annexation. This is all part of, not the only thing, but it's all part of Aries. Right now, all of a sudden, here we go. And for me, Neptune is also very ghostly. You know, it's very ghostly. It's very much like the 12th house and the spirits. It's like the realm of the spirits. So when we have Neptune and Aries, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the evocation of these warlike spirits. The egregores, that are just kind of waiting around, floating on the currents, right, of oxygen and air and ether, and they're just floating around, just waiting to be reanimated. And to me, this is very much what Neptune and Aries is about. It's a reanimation of the spirit, which is Neptune, Aries, which is violence, the reanimation of the spirit of violence. And it's almost, the image that I have is almost like a beast that's waking up, and the beast is almost dragon-like, right? It's like this slumbering dragon that's now kind of stirring, right? And it's hearing the sort of the muffled yells and curses and epithets that are getting louder and louder and louder. And this is a big part of Neptune and Aries. And there's also this strange inability to discern with Neptune. I mean, you would think, apparently there's a videotape of this. You would think that with a video, with a phone, where the guy takes a knife out and stabs dude in the heart, and the other guy doesn't have a knife, doesn't have a gun, he's just got his two fists, whatever. You would think that that would be a clear-cut case of somebody assaulting and murdering another person. Not with Neptune and Aries. Nope. Nope. Now all of a sudden, oh, he must have been bullied. Oh yeah. And look at this guy. Oh, he was a hunter. Yeah, and he had a rifle and he had camo. This is Neptune and Aries. I'm telling you right now. Neptune and Aries. We're going to get into more of this. All right. But you got to keep it. The reason I'm talking about this was because Meow Meow put this up. Frisco fixing to be invaded by SJWs from all over the country. Right. This is what I'm talking about. Now let's stay with this for a moment. Okay. You have a group of people here in Texas, and I've been here now since 2012. So shit, 13 years. A number of Texans have been here much longer than I have, of course, generational families, etc. But I know a little bit about Texans since I've been here. And here's how Texans are. Most Texans, they will leave you alone. They will leave you alone. This is a state where nobody really gets into your business. If they start asking you questions about who you are, I guarantee you they're probably not from Texas. They will speak with you if you speak with them. Uh, they are very polite, very polite. If you're respectful, they'll be respectful back. This is the nature of Texans. They're not unless maybe it's younger Texans or whatever. But the spirit of the people here is generally not ostentatious, unless they get loaded or whatever. But that's the way it is everywhere. Texas is a Capricorn state with a Capricorn moon. That represents the nature of the people here. Huge amounts of respect for older people. When my mother was here, people loved her, right? They loved her. They were polite to her. They went out of their way to make an older person feel good, respected, and comfortable. I can assure you of that. And again, that's very Capricornian. Now, that said, Texans also hold a lot in. And don't think that there aren't a number of Texans who watched what happened during the summer of Floyd. Oh, there were, and there were plenty, and nothing was done. Dallas had riots and shit was broken. They tried to do it in Austin. Didn't go very well in Austin. You get a bunch of people from outside of the country, outside of the state. And they'll be busted, right? They'll be astroturfed, and you get them there, and they're going to be there to protest this thing with Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony. They just keep fanning the flames, right? There are going to be Texans there that are not going to like it. They're not going to like it. Now, remember, when you have groups like this, there are people that are there just to protest because they feel like somebody got screwed up or whatever. And then there are other people on the other side who will protest because um, just get the fuck out of our town. Inside of these groups, they have agent provocateurs. There are actors in these groups. You'll have them on both sides. And their job is to make things incendiary. Hello, Ray Epps. Hello, J6. So this is a bad situation. If indeed there are going to be waves of social justice warriors descending upon Frisco, Texas, this thing could really escalate. It could escalate tremendously. And all of a sudden now you have this eruption, this boil that's bursting, and it's very close to the surface to do that. And I hope they stay away. I hope they don't show up. I hope they don't show up. However, when we look at Mars, what's Mars doing? It's moving closer and closer and closer to Leo. And what have we been talking about with this Mars ingress into Leo? All the shit that's been buried, all the shit that's been buried with Mars in Cancer, retrograde. Everything's been buried, held on to, right? Just shoved down. Well, there's not much more shoving or burying that it can contain at this point. And this goes all the way back. If you go back to 2020 and the beginning of COVID, right? Where was the true node? It was in Cancer. I remember watching the NFL draft. They're all fucking making draft picks at home. Where was the true node? Two degrees Cancer. So if we look at that period of time, the NFL draft was what, in April? So really from April of 2020 to April of 2025, just think about all of this shit that most people have had to internalize and somehow work out and deal with without any kind of external uh, either repercussions or external closure, whether it was the losing of a job, the losing of a family member, the whole George Floyd fiasco, the election in 2024, all the lawfare. I mean, just add it all up. Add it all up. And this stuff has been building in people. And we had this Mars retrograde and the recoil. And now we're getting to this point where Mars is going to go into Leo and it's going to oppose that Pluto in Aquarius. And I think things are going to get heavy. Okay. First of all, when you deal with Leo, you're dealing with pride. And not always in a good way. It's like the Dave Chappelle when keeping it real goes wrong kind of pride. And in some ways, that's probably going to be one of the key narratives for the Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf trial slash story. Pride, respect. This is one of the themes that I'm hearing. When another man puts their hands on you, well, it's fair game. You can do whatever you want to them. That means you take out a knife and stab him in the heart, shoot him. I mean, is this where we're headed? Or are we headed to like the third worldification? Or all of a sudden we're going to become Rio de Janeiro, which used to be a lovely place at one point. Or all of a sudden we're going to become Bogota now? Are we going to have to all arm ourselves just in case somebody takes some kind of objection to, hey, you looked at me wrong. I wasn't even looking. You were looking at me wrong. I can just feel this thing starting to slide off that shelf. And here's what's interesting: is that the media, who has been in charge of all of this for the longest period of time, isn't the driver anymore. Don Lemon doesn't even have a job at CNN anymore. Like these networks who were invested in pushing these narratives, they're not the ones that are influencing and stirring the pot. It's come down into social media, and there's a lot of paid uh, bots and trolls and influencers in the social media world to stoke this thing and to bring in this idea of a reasonable doubt, which again is very Neptunian, right? It's very, very Neptunian. It's very subtle in terms of how not just this event, but other events are influenced. So this is going to be huge. And if it does go down like this, particularly with the timing and particularly with the Mars ingress into Leo, and if people from out of the area decide that they're going to tell Texans what to do, it's not going to be pretty. And then what will happen? Well, you'll have all these cameras and You'll have all these cell phones, and you'll have plenty of pictures of big, strong Texans beating the shit out of people, which will reinforce the image of Austin Metcalf. Oh, this is the state that he belongs to. Oh, are these his relatives? Are these people related to Austin Metcalf? See, this is what happens when you live in Texas. I'm telling you, Neptune and Aries is going to be tricky, 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 because whoever the they are, will use whatever uh, they'll use whatever they have at their disposal, whatever level of justification, to catalyze, incite, and ignite conflict. Now, it would be nice to see if Neptune and Aries was all about peace. No, it's not feeling a lot like that right now. And we haven't even brought Saturn into the mix. You know, when Saturn gets into the mix and we start to bring Saturn and Neptune together, it's kind of heavy. When I think about it, I get a heavy feeling. I don't know about you people, but I get a heavy feeling. I get a very heavy feeling. Let me give you another example here. All right, so one of the things that's become a hot button topic over on Twitter is real ID. Let's talk about that for a second. Real ID. When we talk about ID, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the individual, right? The identification of an individual. Okay, got it. What sign represents the individual, perhaps more than any other sign? Yeah, it's Aries, because Aries is the individual. Everything else that comes after Aries is the individual with a slight tweak, right? Aries is the the raw form of the individual, right? You take your first breath, you're in the first house, you get your rising sign. Congratulations, you made it to Earth. You are now theoretically an individual. You may not be conscious, you may not be aware, but you are an individual. So we're talking about the individual and how the individual is identified. And it's such an amazing exercise to watch people debate this over on Twitter. And they'll say, well, we've had real ID for X amount of time. Yeah, guess who brought real ID onto the books, so that ultimately by May of this year, if you theoretically want to travel or go into a federal building, you'll have to have this thing that identifies you. It was George Bush, and not George Bush 2, George Bush 1. Yeah. So, and what's fascinating is that people will equate this with, because it's been around for a long time, then what the fuck is such a big deal about it? Well, maybe you want to look at who authored the thing and ultimately why they were doing it. So we have something that was brought, George fucking Bush is the gift that keeps on giving. I'm telling you right now. Okay. Anyway, so he authors this thing and eventually gets passed. And at a certain point, all these states now, they have to have real ID. Why? Well, it's because for the last 4 years, the borders were wide open and everybody got their panties all up in a twist, and said, "Oh, these people are they're voting, they're voting, and they're getting licenses, and they're getting all these benefits, and so therefore we must make sure that they're all citizens, so that they can't vote. This is the way that we're going to combat voter fraud." And on the surface, it sounds like a fine and reasonable solution, right? Sounds like a fine and reasonable solution. But I had a license before. By the way, you're not even really you don't really have to have a fucking license, okay? Like if you're willing to go through the hassle to learn all about your sovereign rights and you can uncoil it seamlessly every time you get pulled over and you don't have a license or plates, great, because you can. You don't need those things. Now, will you need them to fly in their planes? More likely, unless you become an American national or U.S. national, that's a whole different conversation, by the way. But you don't really need a license. There are people who proudly drive around with plates and no license, and guess what? Nothing happens to them. Why? Because a lot of these cops, once they find out about it, they go, "Oh yeah, right, it's one of these guys. We know where this is going. Just let them go. It's not worth the hassle." So this idea that you need a license, that's even antiquated. It's a whole thing about travel and there's a definition between like traveling and commerce, if I'm not mistaken. And nobody's really involved in commerce. You're involved in travel. Okay, we'll put that aside for now. But now you have this real ID. And again, it is what? It's about the individual. And you have all of these various voices on Twitter, again, being very Neptunian, barking at each other because one of them was saying, "Oh, just get over it. We've had this for a long time. They know a lot about us anyway." And I do agree with that part. They know more about us than we probably would care to know that they know, right? So I'm not going to argue with that, but it's one of these points that validates just shut up and take it. Here's all these things. Be a grown up. Don't be a crybaby. Don't be paranoid. You're already in the system. Blah 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 blah. Right? And some of that is true. However, when I went to renew my license, by the way, when I did get my license here in 2018, when I got my license in 2016, I got my license. That was 2018. 2018, I get my license, Texas license. I finally get my California license. I get my Texas license. It's a real ID. That's what it says. Real fucking ID, right? Oh, cool. I got whatever. I got this thing. I don't have to worry about it. So then my license expires in 2024, and I go down to the DMV and I bring my license. Here I am. I'm here to renew my license. "Sir, do you have a passport or a driver's license or a birth certificate?" I'm like, "Why?" "Well, you have to prove that you're a citizen." "Well, I just had this license. Isn't this proof enough that I have this license and that it's here in Texas, in this county?" "No, sir, I'm sorry. You're going to need a passport or birth certificate." And then if you bring this up to these people, "Well, what's the problem? Just give them a passport or just bring them your birth certificate." Well, first of all, I don't have a passport. And second of all, I'm not even born in this country. Third of all, I was not born in this country over 60 years ago. And if it wasn't for the lovely and talented one finding this random piece of paper, there was a very good chance I would not be able to provide a current birth certificate. And to get a copy of my birth certificate from an extremely small town in France from 1960, I could be waiting for a very long time, which would theoretically disqualify. There was a period where I was in limbo. I could not prove that I was a citizen. And this is a bit of a problem with Real ID, but I think that it's a gateway to greater digital biometric surveillance. And some people are fine with it for now. Like, at what point does it go next level? Right? Do they tie it to your universal basic income? Do they tie it to your new whatever Wells Fargo digital fucking dollar? And now you have to have this thing which is a biometric uh, medium of exchange. Well, I guess I got to do that now. What's the big deal? You've had a debit card for so long. They know what all your transactions are anyway. You see what happens here? This is all Neptunian shit. Like there's all these layers of justification. Oh, what does it matter? They have all this. Oh yeah, yeah. Chip, who cares? You got a cell phone. Like they've been following you on your damn cell phone anyway. So what does a chip matter? This is what I'm talking about. And you can see this. You can see this on Twitter. People having these arguments about having something that validates your identity, your individuality, even though it's not very individual. And by the way, there are still states that are not going to be compliant. This is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting. Some states, the deep blue states, may not be as compliant. And did you notice who they always have like announcing all this shit? Christy Nome, right? Christy Nome. And Christy Nome at this point is getting me close to wanting to pull my eyeballs out of their sockets. Every time I see her, she's like, I call her Border Barbie. That's Christy Nome. I'm sorry if I'm offending some people, and I'm not a liberal. Okay, I'm not a liberal, but I find the idea of Christy Nome telling us what to do to be completely fucking annoying with her feathered hair always down, with her filters, whatever kind of work she's had done on her face, and her cute little cap, whether she's standing in front of the MS-13 guys down at Setco or Seco, whatever the fuck it's called, or whether she's pointing the barrel inside of, on the side of the head of the ICE agent who's standing next to her, the Border Patrol guy, showing absolutely zero awareness of a rifle, or whether it's scolding us to have real ID. They will use Christy Nome to break bad news. That's her role. Cute little Christy. She's the breaker of bad news. She is the border Barbie of doom, right? So this is what she's. Well, you have to get this now. May 5th. If you don't have it, you're not going to be able to board a plane. What would happen? What would happen if a group of people just decided, well, we're not going to fly, right? What would happen if enough people did the airlines what they did to Bud Light and said, fuck you, we're done with this? What do you think airlines would do? Do you think they would go to the government and say, listen, you're being a little hard on these people? We're losing customers here. Can you lighten this thing up a little bit? You think they would do that? Or do you think they would just get subsidized? And I do think some people are not going to travel by planes because of this. That's my sense. Enough to make a difference? Probably not. I don't think so. But again, we're in this whole thing with Aries, right? We're taking a big, 40,000-foot view of Neptune and Aries. And real ID is about the individual. And it's about the obfuscation of potentially what is behind a national database and a national system of identification. There was a time when, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but if you lived in one state, and let's say in one state you might have had some kind of minor offense, and really a minor offense, and you move to another state, and those two states don't really talk in terms of, maybe the states are 4 states away, and they don't really talk amongst each other because, well, why would they, unless it was like a high profile criminal case or something, or some interstate kind of commerce deal. With real ID, all these states are talking to each other, right? Like what? So whoever you are or were in one part of the country, and whatever kind of uh, record or baggage or information you had in that part of the country, it's traveling with you. It is traveling with you. And who knows? Maybe that's a good thing if you're dealing with perps. But sometimes, people just want to leave the past behind. And there might be things that are, a pimple on on the ass of a dinosaur or something like that. However, in the wrong situation, in the wrong place, all of a sudden becomes a big deal. And it can keep you from getting an apartment or getting a loan or whatever that is, right? So we're having very little wiggle room for people to become Don Draper is really what I'm saying here, right? There would be no Don Draper. Think about that. With Real ID, there's no Don Draper. There's no madman. Oh, there's always a workaround with the system, I'm sure. So we're going to talk a bit more about this Neptune and Aries phenomena that we now find ourselves in right now. So why don't we? I hope everybody. If I didn't get to everybody, thank you for being here and welcome to the show. I appreciate it. One of the things that really struck me. This is another. So we're hold on a second. Let's scratch my ear. I've been following Jason Whitlock now for. I think I started watching Whitlock when he was on Fox Sports 2018, I think. Speak for Yourself was a great show. It was a really really great show, and it was Jason. It started off with him and Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd's he's a Capricorn, so Colin's always kissing the right political ass in order to get ahead and just climb that mountain. That's what Colin does. He just keeps climbing to the top, right? And he's got his own podcast network. He's got a restaurant, and he's very good at being a corporate ass kissing Capricorn, whereas Jason isn't, right? And they had a show together, and I think Jason's outspoken nature made Colin a little uncomfortable, so he decided, good. So then they brought in Marcellus Wiley, who I really like. Now, astrologically, Jason is a Taurus. He's built like a Taurus, right? He's thick. Some people would say he's fat. He might even say he's fat, but he's really built like it. And he's got the temperament of a Taurus. The guy takes a lot of flack, right? He's very opinionated. He doesn't hold back when he has something to say about somebody. It usually has a pretty good case for what he's saying. Not all the time, but pretty good case. And he gets a lot of smoke. And you can see as how a Taurus deals with it. They're kind of like, like a rhino or a hippo, like a large land animal that you just can't really, stop. And the hide is kind of leathery, right? Jason is the epitome of this. I've been watching this guy now for 7 years, and I've never seen him. I've never seen him afraid of anybody, right? Never been afraid of anybody. So I've always enjoyed watching him. Don't always agree with him, but I enjoy watching him. And Marcellus was great. Then he moves over to eventually the Blaze Network and has his own show called Fearless, right? And so one of the things that Jason has been doing he gets called out for being a coon, right? He gets called for being a coon or a Tom because Jason doesn't always hug so-called black culture. He hates hip hop culture. He thinks it's poisoning the black community, that it is all idolatrous, and that what they and we have to do is turn to the Bible and turn to Jesus. Okay? So there may be some valid truth to that, because if everybody was operating with the same spiritual principles, we wouldn't fuck anybody over. We would understand that there would be repercussions, and we would also find not a path of revenge, but a path of forgiveness and redemption, which is, again, theoretically what Christianity brings to the table. So Jason's been doing this, and he catches a lot of flack because he calls out people in the so-called black community, and it makes him unpopular. You know, he called out Stephen A. Smith wanting to run for president a year ago before anybody else and Stephen A. Smith started talking about it. He was talking about it because he'd read his book. And he said, "This is like fucking Barack Obama's book. This is what this is what they do. They create a book and some truths, but a lot of bullshit, and they use that book to promote that person's life." And so Stephen A. Smith is now talking about running for fucking president, which is ridiculous. But anyway, let me get to the point here. Jason Whitlock started to talk about this Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf thing because he's been trying to break down this race thing for a very long time and having a very unpopular persona for the most part in media and social media. Jason Whitlock did something that I had never seen happen yesterday, 2 days ago, Friday. And this gets into this Neptune and Aries. I'm going to show you two examples of two men who are both struggling with, um, I wouldn't say conscience, but I would say their spirit, the spirit of the world, and the spirit of God as it relates to their life and their path. So I'm gonna give you just a brief little synopsis here about the clip I'm about to play you with Jason. And the second clip I'm going to play you is somebody that is not just equally as famous, but more famous than Jason, having an even bigger meltdown, and in some ways related to the same things that we're talking about. So Jason hit the wall. He hit the wall with this Carmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf thing, and what he asked himself this question: have I been wasting my life? Why am I doing what am I? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I work tirelessly in my life to break down this idea that we can all live together if we live under the banner of God and through the word of Christ? Why do I keep doing this? And have I changed any lives? Have I made a difference? Like, he came to this place where he was questioning his own existence and his own path. And he would not particularly articulate it in this way, but I would. Jason Whitlock had a dark night of the soul. And I'm going to play it for you. I'm going to show you a clip, and then I'm going to play another clip from another person, and then I'm going to bring it back to Neptune and Aries so that you know kind of the spirit of which I'm talking about here, and you'll be able to see where this is going for not just Jason Whitlock, but for a lot of men. Remember, Aries is male energy; it's masculine, right? This is a big time for men, and we also have Chiron in Aries as well. And Saturn is about to join the dance, and this is a huge significant time for men on this planet, particularly in this country, and who we are and what we're theoretically supposed to stand for, and what's happened to men. And Jason hit the wall, and wasn't just about him being a man, but about him being a human. All right, let me play this for you. Okay, All right. This was from Friday's show, and when you see him, you're going to see bags under his eyes. And when he uncoils his tail, you will know exactly why you're seeing those bags. Here we go. This is Jason Whitlock from Friday, and he's literally going to address his spiritual crisis, which I believe is also very much related to this Neptune and Aries that we're just, it's literally the baptismal waters of Neptune and Aries are just now being splashed upon us. Here we go.
Tim Pool into this, the popular podcaster who has put out some content seemingly defending Carmelo Anthony, the murderer in Frisco, Texas, that stabbed a young kid, Austin Metcalf, in the heart and killed him. And I'm going to connect all these things together because this is what is been on my heart and mind, and I'm going to get transparent with you guys in a way that will make me a bit uncomfortable and could trigger emotions in me that I would somewhat be embarrassed to share on this show, just keeping it real. That doesn't mean I'm right to be embarrassed by it, but when you have spent so much time and content making fun of a Randy Moss or a Ryan Clark or even my friend even someone I know, Kirk Herbstreit, for crying on air, you know, I try to resist that urge, but just keeping it real with you, last night I was up crying and crying out to God, rebuking the devil, asking Jesus, the Holy Spirit, to intervene. The things that are on my mind, this conversation that we keep having on this show, it's weighing heavy on me. And just quite frankly, so is because it's all connected, so is the roll call event is weighing quite heavy on me because I have this vision of a harmony, of a togetherness, a sharing of values that if you've listened to this show long enough and I've made reference to it, that I had visions as a 6 and 7-year-old boy of, hey, this is going to be your role in this society, that you're going to continue the mission, continue the task of uniting Americans along shared values, along a biblical worldview. And when you reach a point, you start having these visions when you're 5, 6, 7 years old. You're walking down the street in your neighborhood, in the hood, and you have this vision that has never left your mind that, you know, hey, this is going to be your role. You're going to speak in front of big crowds and you're going to be bringing people together. And then 50 years later, you feel like, holy cow, we're more divided and have less common ground and have less shared values. And there's this great cultural divide. And you start thinking like, wow, you sacrificed everything because of these visions you started having as a child. You start making decisions in your life that you think are consistent with executing this vision. And then you get to 57, 58 years old, and you start wondering, like, is this an impossible mission? Is this mission impossible? And did you waste your time? And it's been very difficult for me because you start questioning everything, and you start asking God for understanding and clarity, and you start second guessing, just like, oh, look at this mistake, look at that mistake. And if I had known that 50 years later we would be more divided, more at each other's throats, and more committed to values that separate us, would you have interpreted your vision and life goals and mission? Would you have made a bunch of other different decisions? And so and that's how you end up at 2 and 3 in the morning on your knees crying and asking God, like, what am I missing? What am I not doing? What? And and because you know yourself, you sit there and you know, like, there's sin that I haven't fully eliminated. And is that what's standing in my way? Uh, should I just never leave my house? And because that is a way of combat. It's hard to sin all by yourself, and it's hard to sin when you don't do a whole lot. Can't sin on a Stairmaster machine watching Law and Order reruns. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong for watching. Anyway, I'm going to try to tie a bunch of things together because this is what's on my heart. And
so I just wanted to share that with you and show that to you, because this is part of what I wanted to get to with this Neptune and Aries. And so what Jason is talking about here is he is really questioning everything he dedicated his life to, because now he's looking around and he's seeing the exact opposite of everything that he has dedicated his time and effort towards. And one would say, well, this is a huge spiritual test now, isn't it? But it feels very Neptunian. It's very, very Neptunian. And Jason has he's got a weird chart. He has Venus in Aries, which is in detriment, opposing Mars and Libra, also in detriment. So he has it's very unusual. You don't really see that a lot in a chart. And of course, he's a Taurus, so you can see he's built like a Taurus, right? Let me go back here. I'll show you again. Jason is really built like a Taurus. You can see he's big, he's wide, right? And this Neptune piece is, it's so potent right at the beginning of the sign. I mean, wrap your head around. I mean, look, we will see Neptune rise and fall like a tide. And there are going to be very deep and profound Neptunian moments. But when the sign is at the earliest degrees, it is never as strong as it is in those degrees. You go from the first half decan of a sign; those first 5 degrees are very powerful. So when we are literally baptized in these Neptunian waters of Aries, which is kind of what's happening, we get the undiluted cut. And it's hitting this guy, right? And so he's like, this is his purpose, his mission, and I would say Jason has been an absolute warrior in this world because he's had to take on a bunch of bull. He's not a perfect guy. He's got pride, but he's had to take on a lot of flack from other people. And most recently, he had to take a shit ton of flack from Nick Fuentes and the Groyper Army. And I think that was probably one of those things that kind of pushed Jason to this place. And again, it's very Neptunian, right? And so is it just exclusively for men? No, I don't think so. I feel like there's many of us, who have had a single pointed focus or purpose, or supposedly single pointed focus or purpose. And Neptune in Aries could be extremely deflating. And it can really get you to question who you are, what you signed up for, and does exercising your so-called will even make a difference? I find it fascinating that he's going through this. And of course, the whole Neptune on my knees and praying to God, I mean, it feels completely appropriate, particularly if he felt like the whole thing was a waste and a sham and you could have done other things besides take this on. Let me show you another example of what I'm talking about. Somebody who is as well known as Jason, perhaps even more so in some ways. And you might say, well, that's all this guy does anyway, right? But again, think of where we are right now, Neptune and Aries, somebody who is emotional and upset, and in some ways questioning their mission. And he is a man, and one that you are quite aware of. This is Jordan Peterson, and he's on with Piers Morgan. This is an hour and 12 minutes, and the question is here: why men are more isolated than ever? And let's watch Jordan Peterson here.
Netflix series on adolescence. Jesus, brutal, pathetic, to the core. This terrible moral posturing. That's, I think, the most pathological element of our age. How can we garner as much undeserved moral credit as we possibly can? Well, we'll stand up against toxic masculinity and we'll worship the planet. God, it's so appalling, so destructive. And the evidence is also in Piers. It's like, look at Germany, for God's sake. What a mess. And you guys in the UK, you're not much better. And we're walking down the same road in Canada. So Western Europe as a whole, I've gone through Eastern Europe many times now, talked to many Eastern Europeans there, and they're appalled at what's happening in the West, and they're rightly so. It's all part of the same mess that Starmer's still pushing, a race to the bottom. Christ. Yeah.
Jordan, I'm always struck by how emotional you get when you talk specifically, and this has happened a few times when I've talked to you, I think when your mind takes you specifically to young men who've come and told you what they've been going through. And it's almost like you've become a surrogate dad to just, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of young men who, for whatever reason, have been lost and feel abandoned and feel confused and don't have anyone to try and steer them to some better place. Why does it affect you so emotionally, that?
Well, Pierce, before my public presence emerged, let's say, or developed, I worked as a clinical psychologist, and that was pretty intense. I spent about 13 hours a week, maybe more than that, listening to people at a very deep level. I really liked that. It was unbelievably interesting. It was like one Dostoevskian novel after another, hour by hour. And I really learned to listen, and people are so fascinating if you listen to them and they actually start to tell you what they think. They're unbearably interesting. It's just partly why people keep the conversations at a shallow, and polite level. And it's not surprising. But I like to go deeper than that. And that was kind of bounded when I was doing my clinical practice. It was a set number of hours a week. And I had many other things to occupy myself with. But then when the work I was doing started to explode, I was in contact with thousands of people, not individuals. And they talked to me, and I could see this demoralization, and it's part of fatherlessness, broadly speaking, and sometimes specifically. And I could see the pathway to rectifying that. Like the pathway to rectifying that, as far as I've been able to understand, and I've understood this more deeply as the years have gone by, is that we're built for adventure, Pierce, and you take on adventure by taking on maximal responsibility. And that's the symbol of hoisting your cross voluntarily and trudging up the hill, right? And that's the symbol upon which our society is founded. And the adventure of life justifies its suffering, and it's maximized with maximal responsibility. And it's maximized with truth, because if you tell the truth, what should happen as a consequence of the truth makes itself manifest in the world. And that's the best possible outcome. But it's also the most adventurous thing that you can do, the most exciting thing you can do, hands down. There's nothing that compares to it. That pathway of maximal responsibility, voluntary responsibility, and truth. And I understand that deeply at a religious level. I understand that that's the symbolic world on which our productive and peaceful culture was properly founded. And I've seen the effect of communicating that to people, thousands of people. And it's a great privilege to serve that role, but it's also overwhelming. I think it is one of the things that made me, I was ill for quite a long time. And I think that was part of the reason, just seeing this, like this malaise so deep, and that's also so easily addressed in a sense. It's that paradoxical combination of depth of suffering and ease of rectification, and I kind of understood what the conservatives have done wrong all along. They tend to moralize in a finger wagging way. You should do this, you should do that. And there's truth in that, that imposition of mature structure on immature hedonism and disunion and disorientation. But it's much better to talk to young people about morality and truth as an adventure than as a moral burden, as something that enlightens and offers opportunity, which it absolutely 100% does. I've had so many young men come to me.
Okay, so I just wanted to show that to you because this is Peterson and Whitlock within really the span of about 72 hours, if that. And both of these men are getting deeply emotional for different reasons, but maybe not so different, because they're both talking about their work. And for Jason, it was coming to this brick wall, this cul-de-sac. What have I been doing the right thing? Because I'm looking around, it doesn't really seem like it. And Peterson, uh, I think beginning to, not even beginning, Peterson comprehending um, a vast ocean of grief. Okay, this is what Peterson is in touch with. And look, there are people who think he's unhinged, and he hasn't gotten his fastball back from when he went into that medically induced coma and was kicking the benzos. Um, Seems pretty lucid there. I don't always agree with Jordan Peterson. I think his toady relationship with Ben Shapiro, the Daily Wire, and um a particular, let's just call it Zionist point of view, is not my thing. And if Jordan is being really truthful with himself, it gets in the way of the truth. That's a different discussion. But Jordan Peterson is tapping into grief. And back in the day when I was, I don't know, my mid 20s, I was hanging out with these dudes that were considerably older than me, about 12 years older than me. One who was maybe about 2 years older than me, but we were sort of the younger uh, members of this group, probably about 5, 6 dudes. And we used to get together and we would have like this men's group, okay? And this was, I think, around 1986. And Robert Bly was just starting to take off, and Michael Mead is still around, and he was starting to take off. And the men's movement, I've talked about this before, became a really big thing, especially in California. That was one of the things I left off the Danny discourses on Friday, and so I was 26, and I was just, in a lot of ways, I was just starting my life. And the men that I would eventually sort of matriculate into sort of a larger men's group world were they were baby boomers, born in the early 50s, 51, 52, 53, maybe a little before that, 48, 40. They were baby boomers. And so they had already lived 12, 13 years more of uh, their life than I had. So some of them were even older, had kids, failed marriages. Like it was cool. I mean, I learned things, but clearly those men were there for a different reason. Those men were there because they were wounded and they wanted to heal. And whatever the wound was, it was the wife that took him to the cleaners uh, because he left the marriage for a younger woman who eventually figured out that he was too old and boring for her, and he sacrificed his marriage. Whatever the story is, right? Whatever the story, there could be any iteration of that story, but these were men who were wounded. Some of them very successful professionally, but wounded. And one of the things that Bly talked about, and I never did a workshop with Robert Bly or anything, but I would like, I've seen his videos and watched some of his videos, and even back in the day, I would read magazine articles or things that'd be published about his work. And one of the things that Bly talks about, and for a lot of you people who like do death and grief work, uh, that grief is just below rage. And so in order to get to grief, you have to get to rage. Anger being sort of the lower level of rage, but rage being the the explosive, the catalytic element. And then once you went through that, once you went through the rage, then the grief would emerge. And once you went through the grief, it was purifying, healing, cleansing. And it feels like when you see somebody like Jason Whitlock, and then you see somebody like Jordan Peterson, and remember, we're at 0 Neptune Aries. We're right at the. This thing is fresh. It's powerful. You're seeing two men deal with grief in different ways. And for Peterson, the the grief clearly is a collective, a social grief, and it is connected to his work around young men. Because there was a period of time when Jordan Peterson was a pretty significant figure for a lot of young men. They bought his books and went to his lectures. He was able to speak to them directly in a way where it wasn't their father or their absent father or their stepfather. You know, for a period of time, Jordan Peterson was their spiritual father, and giving them structure and some order, and not just make your bed, but deep psychological and mythological underpinnings for their existence. And so he had a lot of contact with a lot of young men, and I'm sure heard many of their stories. And many of them are pretty bad. And then you heap on top of their stories the social condition. And the social condition for men uh, in general and boys in the West has been horrible. It's been horrible. I mean, I could, I have no problem, absolutely no problem saying that at a certain point in our cultural evolution in the West, that boys were targeted. That that the system, starting with the school system, that the system wanted to emasculate young men. And the first thing that they did in order to bring that about was, of course, come up with things like attention deficit disorder and ADHD, and start to medicate young men so that their natural spirit, their vitality, their energy would be eclipsed and would somehow make them more manageable, and in turn they'd be more focused. Well, perhaps things in a not so organic world cause them to be a little less organic. TV hours, or electrical currents, or putting corn syrup in sodas, or whatever the X factors were, might have tweaked the model of the young male in the West ever so slightly, to the point where maybe perhaps they were a bit more rambunctious. I don't know. I'm speculating here. But there was, at a certain point, a decision that they were going to essentially emasculate young men. That they're the problem. They're the problem in our society. And first thing we got to do is we got to get them on drugs. We have to control their behavior. And the behavior is a mental behavior. Oh, where have we heard that? What sign? What sign controls? What sign is related to prescriptions and drugs and medicine? It is Neptune. It is Pisces. So what we're beginning to see here, this is really the dialogue that we should be having around this as it relates to Neptune and Aries, is the medication. Even Jordan Peterson on his benzo trip, right? I mean, he's kind of a symbol of that in his own way. It's not the same, but he's a symbol of that. He had to medicate for his reasons. I'm sure are different. These young people didn't have a fucking choice. You start going back into the 80s, where Ritalin starts to pop up. I think it's the 80s. It wasn't around when I was in high school. We had to buy our stimulants from non-prescribed sources. That's a different story. But this is what happened, right? And that was just the first layer, like the first broadside against young men, was that they were a problem. And to get the problem under control, we need to use pharmacopoeia. This is what we need to do. And then it began to escalate. This war on young men began to escalate. And when you look at popular culture, because popular culture does play a role in this, and you get into the 90s, and this is where things, and I remember reading articles about young men in the 90s, and it would be like in Psychology Today or something like that. Why we have a problem with our young men, or what's eating Gilbert Grape, right? Something along those lines. Now all of a sudden, young men were James Dean, although it was worse, right? It's what was that movie with was Keanu Reeves in it, River's Edge? And all of a sudden, we're starting to hear these gruesome stories about young men and what they're capable of. There's a whole series of movies that start to come out, right? So look at these monsters. There's this one with what's his name, Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon's first movie is called Over the Edge, and he plays a juvenile delinquent in I guess it was like a suburb of Arizona. So we start to see these images of young men, that are they become monsters. I mean, even the Karate Kid, which I broke down. The story isn't about Ralph Macchio, who learns how to deal with Cobra. The story is about Cobra Kai. The story is about how awful they are, right? That they're the problem. They're the ones that use martial arts for all the wrong reasons. The majority of them are white. They look like young white nationalists. They look like young Nazis. They're the problem. Indeterminate racial Ralph Macchio, raised by his joyous single mother, is not the problem. He's supposedly the solution to the problem. And his surrogate father, Mr. Miyagi, is the guy that's going to help him. Let's have a nice warm hug for diversity. I'm being slightly hyperbolic here, but I'm also not. So this Aries thing is a big deal. And if we look at what's happened with young men in this country, it's horrific. And not just in this country, but in the world. And it's almost as if the social engineers were like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's see if we can create an entire group of nothing but just docile beta cucks. And then let's see if we can create another group of kind of hyped up, super raged, super based borderline sociopaths. and they're on the same continuum. They're just at different points. And rarely do we get a depiction of a young person who is balanced, young man, balanced and adjusted, well adjusted and mature and not perfect, but we get these weird extremes that seem to have been mapped out, right? And what's happening ultimately with this Neptune and Aries thing is that we're starting to break down. I mean, these two guys are breaking down. They're breaking down because they're realizing that for individual reasons that there's a problem, a very, very deep problem. One of whom has done everything in his power to attend to it and has been turned into a sponge, literally. You can squeeze Jordan Peterson out. And the other guy, who rarely displays any emotion, breaks down and has a dark night of the soul. And I think what they're doing is they're getting to grief. They're getting to grief. And I don't know how we do this socially or collectively, but when we look at what we've done to boys and young men and even men in our society, you know, and I'm not to say that there aren't women who have been violated or have their own. We're talking about Neptune and Aries, though, and we're talking about a theme. And I think that there is a huge amount of impotent rage inside of the male community. And it's not necessarily going to get better unless there is some kind of organic process where these young men or these men crash out. They crash out. And they crash out and they have their come to Jesus moment, whatever that is for them. And they weep. And their souls are cleansed and purified. And they can be lifted up. Because if that doesn't happen, then when Saturn moves into Aries, and it's putting a lot of pressure on young men, but when Saturn moves into Aries and combines with Neptune, I think we could have both parts sort of dissolving and melting the grief and the pain, and then restructuring and rebuilding the individual. I think that that's possible. Let's just hope it's not in the armed forces. But it feels to me like that there will be some kind of collective yet individual reckoning for young men and men in general. Hell, even last night at dinner, I was having kind of a reckoning moment. You know, this is a true story. I'm sitting down at dinner last night, and I started to talk about my father. And I had, I hadn't talked about him for a long time. And I started to cry at dinner. And the reason I was crying, I don't want to turn into Jordan Peterson, but it was because I was kind of tapping into his own frustration and grief. Because he was somebody who was tremendously talented. Like, this guy had so much talent. You know, he was a jeweler, and he made these rings, right? He did a bunch of other stuff. He could do anything. The guy he was one of the most talented people I've ever met, and yet with his life, theoretically, he didn't do anything. You know, he was a Leo, so he became the great hobbyist. And when I was a kid, and I've said this story before, but when I was a kid, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed of my own father, and not because he was a bad man or he was a slob or and wasn't any of those things. But you know, he was a warehouseman, and in my mind, I wanted him to be something more. You know, I would make up. I would tell people that he had a different kind of job. You know, he invented rocket fuel for Lockheed down the road, right? I mean, that was my cover story for my old man because I couldn't tell people that he just moved boxes for a living. You know, I was like 7 years old, I think, and there would even be times where we'd be driving to school and I'd see like a people that I knew walking to school, and I felt so bad. I feel so bad for the guy now. You know that I would climb under the dashboard because I didn't want them to see me with my dad, which is horrible, right? And I'm sure he felt like shit. But for some reason, I knew, like, for some reason, I knew that this guy could have been more and could have done more. And I wish I could have been, you know, a little more compassionate towards him. Although, trust me, there were times he did not hold back on his compassionate side. But I got into it last night. I started to actually get teary eyed at dinner because I felt his pain. I felt his pain about not being self actualized or having something in the world where he said, I am this or I did that. And it came to me out of nowhere. And this is what I'm talking about with Neptune and Aries. And unlike Neptune and Pisces, which comes in waves, Neptune and Aries comes fast. You know, Neptune and Aries is you're walking along the beach and all of a sudden this wave comes out of nowhere and smacks you. And if you're lucky, it knocks you over and you become aware. If you're not, it takes you out to the ocean. And there you go. Right? This is the nature of Neptune and Aries. It hits. And I feel like, well, if Jordan Peterson's experiences and Jason Whitlock's experiences, and hell, even over dinner last night, I started to experience it. This thing is in the air. And guess what? It may not be a bad thing. It may not be a bad thing at all. Because again, what have men been doing for a long period of time? Like covering up over over actualizing, uh, overcompensating, hiding out, uh, becoming the masters of passive aggressiveness. I mean, this has been going on for a while. And, you know, I don't watch a lot of TV, but the TV that I do watch is NBA basketball. I watch the Warriors. Very Aries kind of name for a team. And so I pay attention to the commercials. I've talked about this before. I would say 50 to 60%, we'll go with 60% of the commercials during an NBA game, which is a game that's played by men, 60% of the commercials are for women. The majority of those women are going to be, I would say, diverse. A chunk of those women will be WNBA players who have gotten contracts for certain companies. Outside of that, the racial makeup of those commercials are going to be 80% diverse. if you're lucky, you might run across a commercial with Nick Bosa, um, hyping up a protein drink. And that's it. That is it. The so-called white, capable male has been completely written out of anything related to advertising, and during a sporting event that for the most part is watched by males. It's mind-blowing. And yet this is the nature of the social conditioning. That it's not the nature, it is the manifestation of the social conditioning, uh, as to where we are right now. We're at the peak. We're at the peak with this. And a lot of these commercials have been made 6 months in advance, and these contracts have to get played out. Knowing what I know about social trends in the outer planets, this is going to change. And as men enter into what I call an existential crisis, this Neptune and Aries piece, never forget that the powers that be, the social engineers, they know all this shit. Why? Well, because they helped set it up. That's for one reason. And the other reason is because they do know about astrology. So what will we see? Right? We will see what's happened with Peterson, what's happened with Whitlock, and this trickle down effect, and men and even young men coming into these moments of grief. Who am I? What am I doing? What am I doing here? What's going on with my life? Yada, 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 right? And then they have this moment, they crash out. But don't worry, we have a whole new program for you, ready and waiting to go. All you got to do is join the Army, boys. Join the armed forces. We'll take care of you. We'll show you how to be a real man. That is coming. That is the Neptunian hype in Aries. Because when you have a group of people or a subsection of society, and we're going to go with men in the West, and again, I'll use men as a blanket statement. And they have been demoralized, which is really what's been happening. They've been demoralized. You have to remoralize them. If you want them to be somewhat functional and go fight some war somewhere, you have to remoralize them. And this is what we'll start to see with Neptune and Aries. We'll start to see the re-mythologizing of men. But it will be along a certain line. It will be in this Aries mode, which is to go fight, right? To go fight, to have conflict, to create an enemy. Neptune and Aries creates enemies. You don't know if they're real or not. More likely, there'll be some kind of religious enemy, some kind of religious conflict, because that's what Neptune is. You know, the modern crusades, or whatever you want to call them. But this is the unfortunate byproduct of what I see as men in the West crashing out. And there's a whole system ready to catch them and to help them turn them into real men again. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. This is exactly how this thing is set up. And the next thing you know, you're a real man again, but you belong to the state, right? Or something along those lines. So we're just getting started with Neptune and Aries. And I wanted to bring you these two individuals where they're like canaries in a coal mine in a lot of ways. And I don't think they're they may be the first sort of popular or public individuals who are in what I call the culture war. They are in the culture war, who have hit walls, but they won't be the last. And even outside the culture war, they won't be the last. There's a lot of men who just have, over the last, I don't know, 10 years, have just walked away. They've just walked away. Like, what's in it for me in this world? Like, if I want to have a reasonable relationship with a woman, at this point, I have to resort to putting on a mask and hooking up with this woman in England who wants to bang 500 guys over the course of a night. That's the nature of our relationship. Well, this is what's happened. They're walking away. Because women have had their own form of social engineering, right? And it's not. It's like, oh yeah, you can be really empowered. Go fuck 10 guys tonight. That's real empowerment. That's really owning your femininity. And they've been sold a bill of goods too. But we're not really talking about them right now. And trust me, I know that. But men see it, they're like, I want no part of that. Oh yeah. Life, wife, family, career. You sit inside the shoes of somebody who's in their 20s. And unless they have a clear path through medicine or law, something that once they leave their 4-year institution, they can start paying their usurious college loan back, right? Most of these young men have a sense that they're an endangered species. And whether it's because the society as a whole has promoted girl power and STEM this and STEM that, or whether they're going to face stiffer competition from cheaper imports, places like India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or wherever, or at some point being completely replaced by AI and robotics. If I was a young man in our society, I would not feel I wouldn't have a sense of certitude at all about the future. I'd feel very uncertain, to be perfectly honest. And that also leads into this Neptune and Aries piece, right? Because what is Aries about? Aries is Peterson touched on it a little bit, that that life is an adventure, and life is filled with adventurous risk, and that would be Aries. The Aries is the energy and the spirit that says, "Hey, go cross that big body of water. Yeah, go to that continent over there, and start, taking your horse and wagon and move across that continent, and then somewhere along the way, say, this is where I'm going to be, and then deal with every single obstacle or challenge that crosses your path." That's the spirit of Aries. And there was a time in our world where that was quite possible. You could do something like that. You still could, although it's probably a lot more difficult, because eventually you're going to wind up on government land, or you may need perhaps a bit more money than they needed back in those days. But that spirit of adventure, that spirit of, yes, this, there's this thing that I can do. I could test myself against it. It's not really there. What happens if you get all geared up and you've got all your credentials, and you graduated from your college, and you're top 5%. Let's say you were in marketing, God forbid. You go out to the work world, the workforce, especially over the last 8 years. Some of this is changing, but some of it isn't. And now you're competing with other people who aren't as qualified as you, but because they qualify for some kind of particular status that that company needs to have, a certain box that needs to be checked, there's a very good chance that that inferior person, because of that, will be hired over you. It doesn't matter how good your ideas are. It doesn't really matter where you graduated in your class. What matters is that somebody in HR sees a roster, and that roster has to look a certain way. And if it doesn't look a certain way, then HR starts to talk to people at the top, right, in the hiring process. Now, some of that is changing. Trump has changed a little bit of that, but it's still out there. Costco is unapologetically woke. Unapologetically woke. Costco, if you saw the last Tucker show, Costco will say we're fucking DEI and we are unapologetically DEI. So good luck with your marketing degree, top 5%, and all of the great theorems that you might have thought of while you're in college, because Costco is going to hire somebody that is going to be different than you if you don't fit into their little box. This is what young men are up against, right? And I don't want to play a little tiny fiddle for young men, but men in general, this has been a very challenging time. Neptune and Aries is going to be interesting, because the thing that I think ultimately guys like Peterson and Whitlock, and even me last night, I got teary-eyed about my old man, not because I missed him, because I felt his pain, the guy who couldn't get it together and keep it together, not because he was some kind of, um, you know, bad person. He wasn't malevolent. He just didn't have the courage and the support and the tools to synthesize everything and put his talents into action. And I know that really frustrated him intensely, more so than I probably understand. But yeah, so there you go. There's kind of a long dissertation of Neptune and Aries and sort of, where we are with this. There's some other things happening though too, and I hope some of you are still around. I hope I haven't bored you over the last. We start at 7:30, almost 2.5 hours. This is on the complete other end of the spectrum. The complete other end of the spectrum. Let's. I want to bring this up here. I was talking about how men have been demoralized, and are, and you have Jason Whitlock and and Jordan Peterson, and they're breaking down. They're breaking down. Meanwhile, we have this. Hold on, let me show you. Right here. Here we go. It's right here. Blue Origin. You know where I'm going with this, right? New Shepherd. This is named after Alan Shepard, by the way. But it's also interesting using the word shepherd. And here's your flight crew: Perry, Sanchez, Bo, Flynn, Wynn, and what's her name? Gail. Let's look at the launch updates. Here's your flight crew: Aisha Bo, Amanda Wynn, Yale King, Katy Perry, Carrie Ann Flynn, and of course, Lauren Sanchez. This is the exact opposite. And here we go. They got a whole breakdown here symbolically. A few of the key symbols embedded include the target star symbolizes Aisha Bo's ambition for setting big goals, passion for STEM, and commitment to inspiring future generations. There they are. There's the profile. The scales of justice symbolize Amanda Wynn's efforts to advocate for civil rights, break barriers, and empower everyday people to create change. Scales of justice are also Libra, which is opposite Aries, obviously. The shooting star microphone represents Gales King's commitment to sharing important stories with the world. The firework symbolizes Katy Perry's influence across music, pop culture, and philanthropy. Where are all these symbols? I see the star. I'm not sure I'm seeing anything else. I think they're embedded in here. Oh, there's that microphone star. There we go. There's the scales of justice. There's Libra. You got to have a little Libra down there. Let's see. Oh, they're by their names too. That makes it easy. There's Katy Perry symbol. We have two more symbols to go. The film reel symbolizes Carrie Ann Flynn's passion for filmmaking, storytelling, and crafting beautiful narratives. Last but not least, the Alphabet of the bunch, Commander Lauren Sanchez. Flynn the Fly, the main character in Lauren Sanchez's best-selling children's book. The Fly Who Flew to Space is along for the ride. The story is about overcoming adversity, inspiring kids with learning differences to pursue their dreams. Details about the webcast will be shared soon. You got the Vietnamese translation. There you go. Look at that for Miss Wynn. New Shepard's 11th human flight, NS-31. There's your flight team right there. That's a pretty diverse bunch. Lauren Sanchez creeps me out. She looks like she's like from a Quentin Tarantino movie or something. That's some Kill Bill shit. But who else is freaked out by Lauren Sanchez? Like she's like fucking uber aggressive, and she's got that bondo. Anyway, this is happening, right? This is going to happen. I think it's supposed to happen, what, tomorrow? Is that right? We should do a chart for it. Let's see. The window opens at 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. So that's what, tomorrow? Liftoff, April 14th. West Texas. So all you folks up there by Liddy Lou Land, McKinney, West Texas, the launch window opens at 8:30. Maybe I should go up there. Those are those symbols. Let's hear. Let me do this. Let me just do a quick chart. So I had this weird thought. Like, what if something happened to them in space? But of course, like everything else, it's just fake. But what if something happened to them in space? And for the entire 11-minute journey. And they were space shuttled. Like, could you imagine the mythology that would unfold? It was like those women would have constellations named after them. It would literally emblazon this mythos of powerful women forever. They would live in the sky forever. This is like God shit. Now, do I think something's going to happen? No, I don't think so. However, if it did, real or fake or right, it would be the stuff of, they would be talking about these women who sacrificed themselves for science forever. They would literally become deities. All right, let's see. What's the chart look like? Because we're at 8:30 a.m. And then we'll kind of piggyback on this. And we'll take a look at where we are with the planets, and we'll bring this thing into the station. All right, so this is going to be West Texas. Shit, I might go up there. I have to get up early though. Okay, here we go. All right, so here's the launch chart. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Let's bring it up here. All right, here we go. There it is. Okay, here's, so this is 8:30 a.m. Look at that moon. It's Libra, right? This is Libra. Of course, Libra. And it's right at that anaretic degree. Now the launch window opens. What does that mean? Is that when they actually take off, or is that when they start to do their countdown? I don't know, but this is the opening of the launch window. And they get to take off in Jeff Bezos's giant cock rocket and penetrate the heavens. We got Mercury at 20. There's something up here. There's something up here, right? We have Mercury at 28, the moon at 29, and we have an in conjunct. And even with Neptune, here's our Neptune and Aries narrative, and here's the moon in conjunct with Neptune. Ooh. Are they actually going to be able to launch this thing, or are they going to call it off? This is interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Oh, there was something about Uranus and Taurus I was going to bring up tonight. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Came to the back of my brain. Okay. Yeah, we got a Grand Cross here. Look at this. Yeah, in fact, when the launch window moves into Scorpio, okay, this is interesting. Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is in Scorpio, and then we're going to have the moon moving into Scorpio during this launch window. Okay. So for those of you who do not know my view on Black Moon Lilith, this is how I tend to work with Black Moon Lilith. It is different for women than it is for men. Why is that? Well, if you look at the story of Adam and Eve and Lilith, there are three players in that story, if you don't include God. We'll just use those three for now. What do we have here? We've got a bit of a bizarre love triangle. And you have one woman who does not want the other woman there. That would be Eve not wanting Lilith in the garden to split time with Adam. And so eventually, Lilith gets the boot, right? For women, Black Moon Lilith is about how other women deal with them and project onto them. There is some maternal links also with Black Moon Lilith, but it's all about projection. And it's about projecting the worst possible qualities onto that woman. I had a client one time, Black Moon Lilith in Aries. And I said, so when you were growing up, did girls, young women, accuse you of being a lesbian? She said, all the time. All the time. And I said, well, whether you are or not doesn't matter, but you clearly are into dudes, right? Absolutely. But it was this black, because she had a bit of a masculine vibe. Just because she had a masculine vibe didn't mean she was a lesbian. But that's what she got. Right? That's the Black Moon Lilith effect. It's the projection. Oh, we don't know. We don't like you. You're a lesbian. Get out of here. Right. So this is Black Moon Lilith, and I could tell you each sign. Right. Break it down. For men, Black Moon Lilith is more about their unresolved relationship with their mothers. It's the thing that is hidden from them, that they have to encounter the dark side of their mother and have a meaningful process of individuation. And in that moment, Lilith and Eve merge and they become one woman. They are not indistinct. But that only happens when they deal with the shadowy side of their mother. And every dude's got one, right? So we have Black Moon Lilith here, and we have the moon in Libra moving into Lilith land. Now, honestly, how would women view these women going into space? Some of them might be supportive. Yeah, you go, girl. You go. You're there for us, right? I'm not so sure. Katy Perry, by the way, is a Scorpio. So she's definitely in Black Moon Lilith territory. I don't know. I'm not so sure that's going to be the general theme and consensus. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I just think Lauren Sanchez is just so fucking obnoxious. It's like she's fucking Captain Kirk up there or something. I don't get a good vibe from this. I'm sure it'll go fine. I'm sure they'll get up there and they'll have their 11-minute super hyped up amusement ride and come down and have champagne and be lionized, and it'll be a major cultural moment. But I still don't get a good vibe out of it. It just seems so forced and so contrived, and it seems like just a complete and utter vanity project, for Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. And, let's bring the bridezillas along for this 11-minute excursion into whatever version of space they occupy. I don't like the inconjunct. to be honest with you, I wonder if they would. I think the weather's going to be fine, but I wonder if they'll like call it off or have some kind of malfunction or something that comes up because the sync conjunct doesn't feel like all systems are go. That's my take. I also the Sun Mars square and Mars moving in opposition to Pluto. And I'm telling you right now, if something could go wrong on this little jaunt, this T square, this cardinal cross. Sorry, it's not. Yeah, it is a cardinal cross. This cardinal cross would be indicative of something happening, and not in a good way. Like just look, this Sun Mars square. By the time we roll into tomorrow, that sun's going to be at 24. It's a 4-degree orb. Mars is poised right there to be in opposition to Pluto. And if the launch window takes place in Scorpio, you got a Moon Pluto square, and they're sending those women the Moon up into space with a Moon Pluto square. Interesting. Well, listen, I don't want anything to happen to anybody. I hope they have their great moment. What? Oh, wrong day. Apparently, I have the wrong day here. That's today. So we'll be in Scorpio. Thank you. Hold on a second. Moon will be in Scorpio. Let me get back here. It's the 14th. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, we don't want that one. We want this one. All right. April 14th. Here it is. Oh, the moon is in Scorpio. Ah, these are much better ones. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff. Send them up. Here we go. We still have that moon Pluto square. And this is at 8:30 a.m. We still have the sun more. It has moved out of the inconjunct. That's better. That's better. Still, not great. All right, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. They'll have their 11 minutes of fame, and they'll be just fine. They'll be just fine. There you go. I had to recalibrate. Thank you. But still, there's that Mars, 28, 3, 24, 28. These are the degrees I was talking about. It's better. It's not perfect. It is certainly not perfect. Do we have a bunch of biquintiles? Let me see. Biquintile. I got biquintiles with some of the asteroids. Here's Ceres, which is the symbol of the shepherd. A lot of feminine energy. Okay. Yeah, they should be good to go with Commander Sanchez. But this is the energy that we're really paying attention to. Right here. Right here, Mars Pluto opposition. The tension is building. Tension's building. There is this really fantastic trine going on, and maybe this trine is kind of what Jason Whitlock and Jordan Peterson and maybe some of these other people, like me yesterday at dinner, were picking up with or feeling into, right? Because this is all about emotional content, and Mars is male energy, and Cancer, it's probably the least male energy, but it's good for handiwork and defending things. But it does connect well with what's going on with this stellium in Pisces, and it can be, I think, a very positive expression of emotion. It can be very, very healing. There's a lot of healing energy here. but you have to be able to go there and feel it to heal it. Yeah. As far as tomorrow goes, I'm going to work tomorrow with that moon in Scorpio squaring Pluto. Ooh, that's intense. And we have 3/4 of that cardinal cross. The sun starting to move into more of a square with Pluto. I'm wondering how people will be feeling about their jobs and their security with this moon Pluto square and the sun Pluto square. Just starting tomorrow. Just in general. Okay. There was this one thing I wanted to show you before we get out of here. Let me see if I can find it. Where did I see it? It's on YouTube. If I can find it. Second here. What was it? Hold on. Okay. Let's see. Find this thing. Okay. All right. Here it is. Okay. Here we go. Let me see. Okay. Okay, so this was a year ago, and it just crossed my path. This weekend, and so a year ago. Let me go into the. Yeah, 1 second here. So it would have been 2024. So a year ago, I want to get my bearings with Uranus. So, 2024. Here we go. Yeah, it was pretty close. It was about a year ago, but just recently this story just emerged. And I wanted to show you guys. It's pretty cool. It's one of those astrosync kind of things. They found this mosaic of Medusa. Have you guys seen this? This is from a year ago. And they found this.
A well-preserved mosaic depicting a
There you go.
winged Medusa has been unearthed by archaeologists in Spain within the remains of a lavish home dating from the Roman era. The mosaic, found at the Huerta de Otero archaeological site in western Spain, depicts Medusa at the center of a patterned octagon, meant to represent the aegis of Athena, a shield or skin that held Medusa's severed head after the Greek hero Perseus beheaded the Gorgon. In the mosaic, Medusa is surrounded by masks, geometric patterns and wildlife, including fish and 4 colorful peacocks that represent the 4 seasons, according to a translated statement. The thick broad depiction of Medusa would have served as an apotropaic or means to repel evil, Jose Vargas, an archaeology monitor for the Barica II professional school that carried out the dig, said in the statement. Most people think Medusa had snakes for hair and turned people who looked directly at her into stone. In early Greece, the mortal Gorgon was illustrated as hideous and monstrous, sometimes with a beard and even tusks and pointy teeth. But in Roman times around AD 100, Her snaky hair was often detailed as wild locks, and she took on the features of Alexander the Great, such as having wind-blown hair and a turned head, according to the Getty Center in Los Angeles. In the newfound mosaic, Medusa has a round face, bulging eyes, unkempt hair, a slightly turned face and white wings coming out of her forehead, an indication that she could fly, much like the Roman deity Mercury. The fact that the mosaic is multicolored, instead of just black and white, indicates that it was crafted in the 2nd century AD, according to the history blog. The 323 square foot, 30 square meters, mosaic was found by students. Archaeologists first excavated the site in 1976, finding the remains of a Roman domus, or house. But little work was done at the site until students renewed excavation there in 2019, leading to the discovery of the mosaic this summer, according to the statement. It's likely that the mosaic decorated one of the domus's main rooms, such as the triclinium or dining room, according to the history blog.
So the reason I brought this up is because this story literally just like popped today, and I didn't realize this, that they had uncovered this thing. And Uranus is at 25 degrees of Taurus, which is the degree of Algol. Yeah, here. So, oh, this is a this. I'm sorry, this is a different one. This is one that was from. Here we go. Ancient mosaic reopens at Turkey's Kebira ruins. So this is from April 12th. This is another one. This is the one I was actually thinking of. I couldn't find it, but that one in Rome is, or Spain is amazing. Look at this. So this thing just got opened again right here, and that's in Turkey. Let me see if I can show you. Hold on. Yeah. So this is the April 13th. Ancient Medusa mosaic reopens at Turkey's Kebira ruins, and Uranus is right at 25. Taurus, which is Algol, which is connected to Medusa. Is that interesting? I guess the only closer could have got would have been at 26 degrees, which is right around the degree of Algol. So we have Medusa in Spain, and we also have it in Turkey. This cross-cultural representation of Medusa. Oh, look at this. There is a Medusa ransomware that is also, oh, that's interesting. Did you guys know about this? I didn't know about this at all. Fuck, this is total Uranus and Taurus at the degree of Algol. Check this out. I did not know about this. Right here, check it out. Medusa ransomware claims NASCAR breach in latest attack. This is from April 8th. And Uranus is, a degree or two right off of Algol. So there's an actual computer ransomware program called Medusa. Look at that. They got into NASCAR. FBI warned U.S. organizations about Medusa in March 2025. Shit. That's some astrological stuff right there, right? You got Uranus, technology. You have Taurus at 24, 25. Conjunct Algol, which is Medusa. And the severed head. Wow. There you go. Interesting. NASA has yet to respond. I didn't even know about this. Medusa ransomware uses malicious driver to disable anti-malware, stolen certificates. Medusa ransomware slams critical infrastructure organizations. Do you use Gmail or Outlook? FBI CISA issue warning about Medusa. I didn't even know about this. How did I not know about this? How come nobody told me about the Medusa ransomware in Uranus at 25 Taurus? That's fucking crazy. And you have this new, or this mosaic of Medusa reopening in Turkey at the same time. And that's some heavy algal energy. That's wild. There's more information about this Medusa ransomware than there was about this the reopening of this mosaic. Interesting. All right, I'll leave you with that. Some Medusa ransomware. Thanks for being here. We managed to squeeze in a good 3 hours. And don't forget our sponsor, True Hemp Science. Our good friend Chris over True Hemp Science. All you got to do is spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, get the goodie bag with your order. Great CBD products. They're all organically sourced, and you will not go wrong. You can make an appointment, talk to people over there, figure out what suits your needs. $150 will get you free shipping, and there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. We'll be back here on Tuesday for the astro weather. Don't miss out on that. And I'll be putting something up over on Locals, and it's going to be like the kind of the route and the timetable. And if you want to connect while I'm out there on the road, do that. And if you also are interested in getting yourself an astrological reading, you can do that with me as well. All right, take care. Love you all. Treat each other well. God bless.